Pixel, and I'm very excited to bring you one of the first, but not the first, but one of the first hands-on looks at the brand new SliderPLUs Pro V5. This is the long edition, and Motion Module V3. Now the reason I'm saying not the first is because I got this last week and I recorded a review for it, but I realized halfway through the review that I had to swap out a piece of equipment to get all this working the way I wanted it to. And in the meantime, Thomas Vilega ended up sneaking in through the back door and getting his video out first. So I was like, all right. But I definitely recommend you check out his because he covers a couple of bits of information that I'm not going to be covering today. So there's no point in being redundant about it. I'll link it in the description below. With that said, I want to walk you through some of the hardware changes with this and some of the new features that you're going to get with this new slider, and answer the big question: why would you want to get this one over the standard SliderPLUs Pro 25-inch edition or compact, depending on whichever size you want to get? I'm going to start with the slider itself, and then we're going to look at the motion module itself. So the slider and the motion module are designed to work as a unit. The slider itself is designed with a new feature on it that allows you to be able to use it like this, on an incline, specifically roughly 22.5 degrees, and I'll explain to you how you can measure that in. The way that this is designed compared to the SliderPLUs Pro, the standard one, which you can check out right here, in comparison to the SliderPLUs Long, just so you can see the differences, the differences are on the side plates, the end plates, which are the two brackets on the outside. On the standard one, it's the same thing on both sides, just so you can swap the motor from left to right, depending on your preference. But on this one in particular, it's got one side that specifically says incline, and on it, there's a little pressure plate on the inside of it that puts a little bit of extra pressure against the belt to give it a stronger connection. Because when you've got all that weight sitting on this with cameras and all that kind of stuff, and the fact that it's on an incline, if the belt doesn't have a nice solid connection, there's a chance of slipping, which of course you don't want. It'll ruin your shot. So you want to tighten that down a little bit more. You can even, if you need to, there's two little Allen key screws at the end of both of the side brackets that allow you to actually pull the side bracket out a little bit further if you need to give it that little extra bit of tension. I did a little bit, but you're fine. You should be fine out of the box, but if need be, you can always tighten it a bit more if you're seeing any slipping as far as that goes. The other thing that you're going to see on the new SliderPLUs V5 is these new legs that, as you can see, have a locking mechanism. They actually screw up here at the base of it, like that. I'm going to try to do this while the thing's actually moving. There you go. So it actually screws and unscrews at the base, and then you can very easily rotate it around with your finger and then lock it back in place. And it's got lots of different little teeth on it that allow you to micro adjust it at different intervals to be able to dial it in so you can get it balanced on uneven surfaces. This is a new design compared to the original design that's a lot like the stand one, for instance, that uses tension. So if I want to turn these, there's no locking mechanism on this at all. I just have to put pressure, and I really have to apply force to turn this. It's nice and strong. If I want to increase or decrease the tension, there's little Allen keys here on the inside that I can use to increase or decrease the tension. I personally really like that design. I like both of these designs, but I can see why some people preferred this. If you're somebody that uses the slider on a surface all the time, then some people have complained that this can get a little loose over time and they would have to tighten it up with an Allen key a little bit. I never ran into that issue, maybe because I didn't use it on a surface that frequently. Once in a while, it stayed just as rigid, like this has stayed rigid since I've gotten it. I've never had to adjust anything. As far as my preference between these two, I like them both. I actually found it a little bit easier with the original design to allow it to adjust a little bit more quickly. So for instance, if let's say I take something like this and I put that on the surface, now this is uneven, like that. So all I have to do is just bend that leg down and we're secure. It takes 2 seconds. The other one requires you to unscrew it, turn it, make sure that it's at that right tooth. You screw it back in. If you can't, you have to try another one. It adds maybe an extra second or two to your production time, which is, of course, unacceptable. Edelkrone, what are you guys thinking? That's sarcasm, just in case you guys weren't aware. Some people get butthurt over stupid things, like, you know, people who put out reviews before them and all that kind of stuff, but whatever. That's not me. I'm mature. But I digress. I like both designs. They both work fine for me, so take it as you will. I think they're both great. Yeah, it's just different. Now, the motion module has several new things. A lot of the new features are actually going in the motion module. The first thing you're going to notice is that the power cord, the DC cable or battery cable, connects on the outside. Some people complained about the fact that it actually connected underneath. And I can understand why. If you're using it on a table, you constantly have to move that cable out of the way. I always had it on a tripod, so it was never an issue for me. I just plugged my DC cable in underneath and it was nice. Cable management, it was out of the way. But this is an improvement because now it's out of the way. You can reach it with your cable, just makes more sense. So they listened to their customers and they've addressed that. The other thing you're going to see here, which is really cool, and this is a first for an Edelkrone product, is it's got a power button. A nice little power button. It's very unassuming. You press and hold it for a second after you put your battery or after you plug it in. You press and hold it for a second and it powers on the thing, just like the controller does. And it doesn't only have a power button on it, but it also has an auto power off feature. So if you forget your battery in, which anybody who's ever owned an Edelkrone product has done, it'll auto shut off just like this to preserve battery power. And I've done that before, and I was very pleasantly surprised that after leaving my NPF battery in, which can take a while to charge, I came back the next day and it was still fully charged. And while we're on the subject of battery, may I add that the battery consumption on this is stellar. I must have done about altogether, I've had this running consistently now since I put the new battery in, for maybe 5 or 6 hours altogether. Because I did multiple takes and I'd walk away, I'd come back in the room and this thing was still running. This battery is still at full. It hasn't even nudged the battery level. So I could probably leave this running for days without even thinking about it and be perfectly fine. And this is running on 1 MPF. I can put 2 in here, okay? So that's really cool. The next thing about this is the fact that you can actually see it actually has a battery indicator right on this little LCD display, this brand new LCD display, which I think is a very cool addition. Normally, if you wanted to go through the app or the controller, you have to go into the battery section. It lets you know what the battery level is on all your different devices. On the app, you can see it up at the top of the app, right there. Like when you're actually looking at your app screen, you can see at the top all your different devices with their battery levels. Here, I just have to glance over and I can see it right away. Really cool. Next thing about this little LCD, which is very, by the way, if you want to know how it looks, you've seen it in the B-roll, it's very similar to the controller itself. It's got the same kind of LCD. You can check out my review of the controller right here if you want. It's got the status indicator of your slide. You think this would be gimmicky because I can look at my slider and see if it's moving. Not if it's doing macro shots, and I always ended up stopping my recording prematurely. When you're doing a macro shot, we're talking about these little micro movements, super micro movements. And if I have it set to really slow out very slowly, which you can do with an Edelkrone, you can really have it slow out super subtly, then what would end up happening was I would think it stopped, and then I'd hit the stop button, I would take it on a big screen, and I'd look at it and I could see it was slowing out, and then it stopped abruptly. And I went, damn it. I just needed an extra 2 or 3 seconds. Now looking at this shot, I'm looking at the progress bar, and you'll probably think it's stopping. It's going, going, going. We're getting there. We're getting there. Almost there. Okay, it should start slowing out. Slowing, slowing. It looks like it stopped, didn't it? It's not stopped yet. Go. Still not stopped. And now it stopped. And then I can press my button. I really love that. And I come to prefer the LCD screen on the controller and on this because it's a high contrast and it's a longer bar, which gives you a more subtle readout of the thing. On the app itself, I find the bar is a little bit narrow and kind of wide. And it's like a light green on a dark green, so it's not always that easy to read, where you can really read it extremely well. The last feature that this little LCD screen gives you is something that actually addressed a concern I had. And that was the fact that how can I know if I'm at a 22.5 degree tilt? I don't have a tripod that measures it for me. Is there some measuring gauge? Yes, there's a gyroscope right inside the motion module itself that lets you know if you're at a safe tilt. So if you take your tripod as you're starting to lower it, you're going to see it's going to it's going to say safe, 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 danger. Oh, dial it back, lock down your tripod, like that. So it lets you know, okay? And while we're on the topic of that, when I was looking at Thomas's video, I think I remember right. I'm gonna have to watch it again, but I remember him having his motion module set up at the top end. I don't think you can do that. I remember reading somewhere where you couldn't do that, and on top of it, I actually experimented with it after I watched his video. I tried to incline it and put the actual motor itself on the upper side of the angle, and it immediately said no, you can't. So as soon as I brought it down, it said yes. So as far as I know, you're supposed to have it on the lower end, but I'll check with Thomas's video again just to make sure maybe you can, because it would actually make sense to put it on the upper end, because then you get a bit of counterweight, because generally you have a little bit more a lower center of gravity at things that are lower. So for what it's worth, this is generally how you have to set it up. Now that we've got all this hardware out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about setting it up and getting yourself equipped. Remember I told you that I recorded it last week and then I had to swap out some equipment. And what I had to swap out was, most specifically, the tripod head. I purchased a new Benro tripod, a video tripod that I really loved, the Benro A673TM video legs that can support up to 110 pounds. It's a real tank, and I loved the legs. But it came in a kit. You couldn't buy it alone. It came in a kit on B&H with the S8 Pro video head, which is one of their best ones, at least within a reasonable budget as far as I know. And when I was just doing regular camera work and stuff like that, it was fine. But when I put the slider on it, it was not fine. And the Achilles heel of that particular tripod head, I wasn't a big fan, was the fact that it doesn't lock well. You can't lock it down. It's got these tiny little knobs for locking it down. And I couldn't get it past maybe this far past the center column on either end, and then the whole slider would start to go, ooh, and I caught it. The other thing that didn't lock well was the tilt. And the reason that's an issue is because if you don't have your slider lined up perfectly down the middle with your tripod legs, after a bit of weight, it starts to unscrew itself and the whole thing tipped over like that. And I went, I was in the middle of recording and the whole thing just came barreling down towards my thing, just in a swing. And I went, gah! I caught it and I went, screw this, I'm returning this stupid tripod. It was still within my return thing. So I was like, screw that. I couldn't only return the head though. It came as a kit. So I wanted to kill two birds with one stone. I returned the legs and the head, and I ended up getting the Benro I just got this in today. That's why I'm doing the review today. A474T. This can support up to 77 pounds. It's got a 100 millimeter bowl on it, and it's an absolute tank. It does have the screw legs, which some people prefer. I have both. I have the clamp and the screw legs. I like them both as far as that goes. This goes way down to the ground, which is something video legs can't do. So if I want to truck in and do a shot that goes right up to the ground, where my cat can go and sniff the lens type of shot, I can do that with these. I couldn't do that with the other tripod because it doesn't go as low. But this thing can support a ton of weight. There is a cheaper option if you're looking for a little bit more of a budget that's just as good. It's the smaller brother of this one, the A373T, which takes a 75 millimeter bowl. It's a little bit cheaper. You might be saving yourself $100. Both of these are very, very affordable. Okay. Now, if you actually go on Edelkrone's site, there's two tripods that they actually recommend. One is the 373T as the budget option, or there's the more expensive Manfrotto 536, which can support, I think, 55 pounds, but it's carbon fiber. It's got the nice clamp legs. It goes, you can raise it super, super high. It also uses a 75 millimeter bowl, as far as I know. But you're paying over $1,000 just for the legs. What? Now, you don't have to get the 536. If you want to get the cheaper version, it's the 535, but you're still paying almost double this, okay? So it's substantially more expensive. If you work in a studio, I really don't recommend carbon fiber tripods if you're working in studio. And even if you go outside and take trips once in a while, aluminum is perfectly fine and you're saving yourself a pretty penny there. But if you're somebody who travels a lot, you go mountain climbing, you want to take your camera equipment, yeah, definitely bring a carbon fiber tripod with you. If you travel a lot with your stuff, carbon fiber is worth the extra expense. This is perfect for my particular usage. Excellent, I can definitely recommend it. If you've got the budget, you want to spend more money, go with the other one. However, the most important equipment you need to prepare yourself for, and this is what I ended up having to swap out more importantly, was the tripod head. Like I mentioned, the S8 Pro doesn't lock down properly. And it's not a cheap tripod head either. I already owned the Manfrotto 502 years ago because most of my pan shots and tilt shots and all that kind of stuff, I do it with motion control. I've got that. So it's kind of redundant for me to get a tripod head for that. But the big advantage of getting the 502, and the reason you see the 502 on Edelkrone's website, those are the tripods and the tripod heads that they generally use in their demos, because it has a really good locking mechanism. Usually on most standard tripods, you don't need to, it's not recommended that you put it on a tripod head because it'll end up sagging at both ends. In this particular case, you need to. So you need something that really locks down nice and tight. I do not recommend you use this. In fact, I advise against using a tripod head if you're just doing horizontal shots. It's going to ruin your shot anyways. You're going to get a lot of sagging. Just connect it directly to the center column. But if you're using an incline like this, then you do need to use a tripod head. And I strongly recommend the 502, the Manfrotto 502. That's what I had end up having to wait a week for, because on the other one, it almost destroyed my equipment and my soul in the meantime. Now, are there any cons to this new system? Only one. And it's a bit, it's an upgrade that has a flaw. And that's these little screws. It's nothing, it's not the end of the world. But this is the same reason why what's his face from Make Art Now complained about the Ronin S and what he liked about the new Ronin SC. The old Ronin S had a little knob that kept coming off all the time. You kept losing the little knob all the time. Whereas the Ronin SC, they solved it and they fastened it. When I got my Ronin S, it was already fastened on as far as that goes. But these little knobs, for some strange reason, you have the screw, and the head of that screw, albeit is thicker now and it's easier to turn, but it screws off. So it detaches from the stem. And it happened like 2 or 3 times when I'm screwing, and then the thing went flying across my room, like, oh shit. And it's black too, so it's hard to spot when it falls underneath a piece of furniture. So I'm always very conscious of making sure to screw it so that I don't drop it after. So yeah, I'm not sure what Edelkrone was thinking. Maybe it's just that one that I got. They accidentally sent me a version of the screw that wasn't supposed to be, but it seems weird. But otherwise, the thumb screw is perfectly good and works perfectly well. And everything else works as advertised. It's high quality, it's robust, it's extremely precise, it's very quiet. I'll give you one last piece of advice. If the only extra piece of gear that I would recommend you adding to this, at least as far as the Edelkrone system is concerned, is the tilt kit on it. Or if you've got it on the Head Plus, to just use the tilt functionality, because if I have the pen, it's going to make my shot crooked, right? So what you want to do is be able to come in and truck in and get this nice angled shot, maybe to do a swooping under the bridge type of shot, and have your tilt follow something overhead. You can get some really neat shots like that. That's one of the reasons why I use this system like this. So, and you also don't want to put too much weight on it, although this tripod head seems to be able to handle it just fine. So yeah, it'll work with the tilt kit and stuff like that, but if you're going to do a panning shot, maybe if you want to get some kind of an effect, but I would imagine that could risk unscrewing your camera. So just take that under advisement. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this little quick overview. Can I recommend it? Absolutely. Everything that I've reviewed from Edelkrone so far it's up to a very high standard. It works great for me, lasts forever, and their customer service is second to none. They are stellar. Even Thomas said it. Everybody who speaks to Edelkrone, they are amazing, and they go out of their way all the time to be able to help their customers. And this is an unsponsored review. Okay? So hopefully you enjoyed this, and happy shopping. Take care.